Right, coaches, what books would you recommend? This is a question I get asked all the time. And it's one of the reasons that I wrote my own book, The Science of Hybrid Training. Make sure that you check it out. It's available from Amazon. Link is below. And I can understand why this question is so popular, because books offer an opportunity for reflection. They provide answers, but they also generate loads more questions. And this is really important because it allows you to sit down, reflect, take in the information, which allows you to synthesize that information and incorporate it with your own, rather than just scrolling on Instagram and then just copying and pasting whatever you see quickly. So with that in mind, what books would I recommend to any coach? That could be a sports coach, S&C coach, anything within human performance. First of all, I am Dr. Phil Price. I am the course lead for the Masters in Strength and Conditioning at St Mary's University, and I am the host of The Progress Theory. And if you want to learn more about human performance, make sure that you give this channel a subscribe. Right, let's get at it. 5 book recommendations for any coach. And just to add before we get started, I have kind of cheated here because one of these recommendations is actually a blog post, but I think it's so important and that's why I've included it here. Number 1 is Paradigm Shift, Rethinking Performance by Evan Peikon. Now, I know Evan really well. I think he's an amazing physiologist that's done some amazing work with developing his own NIRS device down at Knox. And this is a great device for non-invasively measuring muscle oxygen kinetics. And more importantly, it's one of the first devices to non-invasively measure nitric oxide in the blood as well. And Paradigm Shift is Evan's collection of ideas around physiology and how we can utilize physiology for monitoring and helping us improve performance. Now, I think this is particularly important for anyone that's interested in any type of hybrid sports, CrossFit, high rocks, etc., etc. It is excellent at explaining the different physiological limitations an athlete may have. Now, that might be an athlete's ability to utilize oxygen at the muscle, or the ability for the athlete to get oxygen to that muscle. And he takes this all into account and makes some great recommendations for how we can use this information for manipulating and improving our training programs. This book also has chapters on athlete-centric models and some around load management, which I think are also excellent. And what is even more crazy is that this book is actually free. It's available as an ebook and you can download it by clicking the link below. Okay, number 2 is a blog post. It is by an excellent S&C coach called Sean Seal, and it is called High Lactate Levels During Exercise, What Causes Them? Lactate Made Simple. The Upside Strength podcast is one of my favorite podcasts. Now, I've had Sean on the Progress Theory several times already, and it's always a great conversation every time. I really like his way of thinking. So essentially what he does is through his coaching, he develops his own training programs, and from that he realizes there might be areas of knowledge he might not be as clued up in as he thinks he was, or he comes across problems which he needs to solve. Then he utilizes the podcast to try and answer these questions by interviewing people like coaches, physiologists, athletes, etc., etc. So he goes out and finds the information, and we're essentially allowed to listen in and see him go through that process. And I think it's absolutely amazing. He's created some amazing resources by doing that. Now, his work on lactate, I think, is some of the best work that he's done. Lactate is certainly something that's been misunderstood in the past. It seems to be something that gets blamed for fatigue all the time, and that's not quite right. Lactate actually is an incredibly useful molecule that can be utilized for energy, and it can be utilized by the athlete for determining training zones, etc., etc. So if you want to understand lactate more, make sure that you check out this blog post. Again, it is free. The blog post link is down below. And while you're there, Sean has some amazing stuff on his website. So if you like this blog post, you're going to like all of his other stuff as well. Now, before we move on to book recommendation number 3, I just want to give out a shout out to this video's sponsor, Human24 Rise. Now, Rise is not like other caffeine products. Rise is designed to be taken 60 to 90 minutes once you've woken up to take advantage of your biological waking processes and not to overstimulate your sympathetic nervous system. It's a combination of caffeine, nootropics, and a hydration formula to help you feel naturally energized, to improve cognitive function and alertness, to really optimize your morning. Make sure that you head to human24.com, that's HMN24.com, or use the link below where you can use the code PHIL10 to get 10% off. Right, back to it. Number 3 is Free Play, Improvisation in Life and Art by Stephen Nachmanchevich. Now, this book was recommended to me by S&C coach Tom Farrow. And since I read it, it's really been the source of my interest in developing creativity. Now, Nat Manchevich was a pioneering violinist who was also a coach, and he particularly taught classes on free improvisation. In the book, he explains his rationale and why he thinks free play is really important. And a lot of this is through his criticisms around overly structured play and how that limits our ability to express ourselves and really push the boundaries of creativity. Only giving ourselves time for free improvisation, probably alongside our deliberate practice, is the only way to really achieve true creativity. Now, I believe this to be particularly true in all professions. Every chapter in this book is literally just absolutely incredible, and it makes you really want to learn more around creativity. It certainly encouraged me to try and push myself creatively in many different ways. I think when I learned through school, I was so structured around how I learned, often by writing notes and then just trying to revise the notes. I was just memorizing rather than learning. And this really opened my eyes to where I was going wrong. Okay, number 4 is Shop Class as Soulcraft by Matthew B. Crawford. This is a recent read of mine, and it really made me question my career. I'd like to think I have a good career. I'm a senior lecturer at a university and run a master's course. But this made me really think as to what is my role and what is a good level of knowledge and skills within my own area of S&C. Crawford details how we've separated knowledge work from manual work, mainly because many years ago, the development of the assembly line, which actually was started by Ford, and this over a long period of time has led to this cultural shift where you've got thinkers that are just completely useless with their hands, and then you've got people that are good with their hands, but they're not given the opportunity to really think. And that leaves people to have less pride around their manual work. I mean, think about it now. Things are so easy. If something breaks, you just throw it away. Whereas back in the day, you did everything you could to fix it, and you would learn how to. And this really shouldn't be the case. We should combine our knowledge work with our manual and labour work, particularly in S&C. Knowledge work is really important, but at the same time, how are you going to put those knowledge and these ideas into practice? You need to start collecting data in the field. And if you're collecting data in the field, you need to be good with equipment. You need to be good at methodological differences around how you collect that information. And I think this is really important. We shouldn't have someone that's just over there thinking and someone over there that's doing all the data collection. We should be joining that because that's where true knowledge actually comes from. And that's why it made me think my career. It made me rethink of how much labour work I was actually doing or given the opportunity to do when I'm at the university. Teaching's great, but I want to get my hands dirty more in data collection and research and that type of thing, because that's how knowledge progresses. So take pride in your work. Your skills with your hands are just as important as your skills with your mind. Okay, last one. Number 5, The Little Black Book of Training Wisdom by Professor Dan Clever. If you want a book that really simplifies the training process and allows you just to focus on the important things, then this is the book for you. Now, Professor Dan Clever was actually my PhD supervisor, so I know him really well, and I really credit him for developing my ability to think deeply. And this book really allows you to see how his mind works, taking a lot of information and simplifying it so you're left with the important parts. One of the concepts that I learned from this book that I really lean into is the idea of hot sessions. And it's something I actually wrote about in my book, The Science of Hybrid Training, where you have certain sessions during the week which take priority. And then you organise the rest of the training week based on where those priority sessions or hot sessions are. They're the hot sessions because they're probably the most intense or the ones that are going to generate the most fatigue. So to really make sure that you're maximising those sessions, you want to make sure that you're fresh going into them and you have enough recovery after them to make sure that you're really developing the adaptations from that session as much as possible. And it's simple nuggets of wisdom and coaching wisdom which makes this book really important for any coach. One thing this book really highlighted to me is where people may be overthinking their training process and they start to stray away from keeping the main goal the main goal. If you haven't read any of these books, I recommend that you read them this year, make them a priority, because I learnt so much from them that I want you to as well. And if you don't have them, they are available at Amazon, and I have the links below, as I do for my book, The Science of Hybrid Training. Now, what books would you add to this list? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.